I'm Nate Jackson.
And I'm Eben Britton.
And this is the Caveman Poet Society.
One time I saw myself. I argued with myself, except he was like an even faster talking version of me, and he was calling me out on my Facebook feed saying that you're portraying yourself as a great father and a great husband, but all you really do is like post pictures of you and your kids and you and your wife on dates, but you're always preoccupied. You know, I'm watching myself like take a picture of my kids, about to eat dinner, then I just start answering emails, and I was like, holy shit, you know, what a lesson to learn.
Listen to the wolf poetry. What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Caveman Poet Society. My name is Nathan Jackson. I'm sitting here next to Eben Britton. What's up, dude?
Hey, my brother.
What's going on?
Shit.
Just podding it today.
Good day, man. Really good day. Feeling stoked on life, huh?
Just logging pods, man.
Logging pods.
Pod loggers, dude.
Hell yeah.
We also got Jed in the house. What's up, Jed?
What's happening?
Looking, as indifferent as you always do. It's not even addressing me. You don't look at me. You don't care.
You can't tell if it's good, if it sucks, if anything makes sense.
But we got a cool guest in the house today.
Yes, we do.
Woo!
We got a really fun guest, a good buddy of mine that I've met a while ago, starting on my journey into the cannabis industry. Probably has the best, in my opinion, has created the best tool for consuming cannabis concentrates, the Vape Exhale, a fantastic vaporizing unit. He can tell us a little bit more about that and the more psychedelic adventures he's had as of late utilizing this tool. And that is my brother Seibo Chen.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey,
What's up,
man.
Seibo?
What's going on?
It's great to have you here, man.
I appreciate being here. I've been wanting to be here ever since I heard Jim McAlpine's episode and was very jealous that he was on here before me.
I love that, dude. And a little disclaimer, you're a fan of the pod. You're always texting me about the new pods that we've put out and what you loved about each one. I really appreciate that, man.
Totally. As I said, even if I didn't know you guys, I would still be listening to it. So it is a great podcast.
That's
Dang,
awesome,
dude.
man. Thank you.
It's cool to hear that because I don't know, when you record this thing, you just do it and then you put it out in the world and you hope people listen. You know, you don't know if they do.
Yeah.
And then if they do, you don't know if they like it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you know, I before we started recording, I had told you, you know, a mutual friend of ours, Jeremy Moran, kind of put you on my radar. So I've been kind of following you from afar for a little while. And when you guys came out with the podcast, he was super stoked that you were the other co-host, and I was super stoked that Eben was one of the hosts. So we started listening to it together, and I mean, you know,
That's
all the
so
things that you
awesome.
guys talk about are very similar to what Jeremy and I talk about when we're alone together. So
That's
it was
cool.
great to hear other people, you know, share these ideas and put it out there.
I love that, man.
Yeah. We're going to get into all those ideas today.
So let's get the boring stuff out of the way.
Yes.
What is the Vape Exhale? Maybe even before that, how did you get into the cannabis industry?
Okay, so I got into the cannabis industry like a lot of people in the past, just a little bit by accident and wanting to kind of just cover the own costs of my cannabis consumption. So in 1997, I started volunteering to sell vaporizers for this guy that lived about a half mile away from my mom. I was 21 at the time. Just started consuming cannabis. I had wanted to be a professional athlete. I was actually at UCLA. I did not consume any cannabis or alcohol for the first 3 years. I was
In college?
In college.
Wow.
What about high school? Nothing?
No. I wanted to be a football player like you guys. So I remember reading that Barry Sanders was like 5'7", you know, my height. So I just thought oh, if Barry Sanders could put on that muscle, so can I.
I love it.
So
I mean, that's a legitimate fucking
Hell
thought.
yeah, dude.
yeah, so I was like super focused. I was always like working out and just trying to get like faster, jump higher, doing plyometrics. And, I think I got up to like 145 pounds, which is like my heaviest. And then by the time I was 21, I was like, you know what? I should start enjoying college. I don't think I can make the UCLA football team, And my roommate was, this is kind of the funny part of the story. My roommate didn't even go to UCLA. He was an actor, and he was a stuntman. We did capoeira together. So
That's cool.
He just loved being around all the college girls, and he was a super stoner. Actually, despite not consuming cannabis, I sold cannabis in college, and I only had one client, my roommate. He bought an ounce of weed every other week, and he was this
From me, and I made $100 on him.
Exactly. And he was actually this really tall, good-looking British model that could do all sorts of crazy acrobatics. So he would audition maybe just one time every other month, get like a $30,000 check from the Gap, and then just smoke his earnings away. And that was kind of like, it just told me that all those commercials I saw about your brain being on drugs.
This is your brain.
Yeah,
this
I
is your
was
brain
like,
on drugs.
I was looking at him going,
Any
Dude, what are you
questions?
doing? And now that guy is Jason Statham.
that guy
just
is Brad Pitt. No.
Well, no, there is something to be said that a guy who has a lot of physical skills, can do high-wire acrobatic stuff, is also a fan of cannabis. I think
very
cannabis
interesting.
has something to do with hand-eye coordination, with being athletic, because it's in the mind. I mean, the athletic body does not do anything without the mind telling it what to do. You know what I mean? So you have to have a very strong athletic mind to be able to do the shit that your roommate was doing.
Yeah, and you guys hit the nail on the head, which was once I started consuming cannabis with him and we would go train together, I would the moves, I wouldn't say were necessarily easier, but I was just like kind of flowing with the moves a lot more, not thinking about like, do I look cool while I'm trying to do this flip or this cartwheel or this handstand? And, that was kind of like my first foray into understanding how cannabis could help you get into flow state. And actually, if you consume the right amount and don't get overly intoxicated, it could really, allow you to be the best version of yourself while you're doing whatever activity that you're doing.
You're so right about the flow state. These days, I think people cannot find the flow state because their phones are always around. There's always something bringing you out of that focus. And maybe that's why cannabis is so popular now, because it's pulling people back into the flow state that the modern world is bringing them out of.
Amen to that. And I'm not into,
I mean,
God or anything.
Well, if you smoke cannabis, you are, in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
But like a lot of, I rail. You guys have heard me. The listeners talk about bird scooters on this podcast. But people who are riding bird scooters, like when you're riding in traffic on a bike or a skateboard, you kind of need to be in the flow state. You need to be fucking dialed in. And these guys are not, because they're relying on the phone to tell them where the app and all this thing, their headphones are in. These people are not focused, man. And it's not just people riding bird scooters, but those are the most dangerous ones. But there's people walking down the street, people you're trying to have a conversation with.
Driving cars.
Yeah. We need to find that flow state more often. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, actually, just to stay on this for something real quick, is I recently read an article about like why people have road rage. And the hypothesis now is that when you are driving, especially on the freeway or going fast, is that your mind goes into the state understanding like, hey, I'm actually handling a vehicle that's going extremely fast. I need to be aware. And even though you're kind of relaxed while you're doing it, your, I guess, nervous system is
jacked.
Yeah. So when someone cuts you off or does something like that, it just kind of evokes this stronger emotion. And, we have children. So, when we see our kids playing and they're in flow with each other and you're like, okay, it's dinner time or it's bath time. And then you see how upset they get when you pull them out of flow state. I was like, oh, that makes sense. When you're driving, a lot of times you're like, really focused on making sure like, no one's getting hit. You're under the speed limit. A lot of calculations are going on in your head. So when someone just flips you off, then that's why like something so innocuous like that, pisses you off. It's like pulling a kid out of flow state and they're all upset about not being able to play anymore.
Interesting.
Right. Well, and so right off the bat, you found cannabis, got you in your flow state when you're doing capoeira.
Yes.
A Brazilian martial art.
A Brazilian martial art. So did you start using cannabis, were those happening simultaneously for you? Like the first time you really started using cannabis, you were also doing capoeira?
Yeah, actually, I had been doing capoeira for a few years up until that time. I met my roommate because we used to do auditions together to do stunt work. And
you were a stuntman as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
And the reason I started consuming cannabis was his agent started giving him Vicodin. He would pass the Vicodin down to me. I would take the Vicodin, get stomach aches, and it's like, man, I need a better way to manage my pain. And he would always offer me like a joint, and I was just very much like, well, even if it helps, I'm smoking something, right? So
it's got to be bad for me.
Yeah, so that's when I really started researching vaporizers. So for me, in 97, the first vaporizer that I bought, it was actually a heat gun. And the heat gun, you would just point at like the herb, and to most people, it looked far less healthy than just smoking a joint. But
you like shoot it to death first.
Yeah,
and then just
yeah.
like,
You're just basically incinerating it. And
a ray gun.
Yeah, and also I was living at my mom's house, so every time we would turn on the heat gun, the lights would flicker because it's drawing so much energy too. But
it's like biblical fucking weed smoking.
Yeah, yeah. So essentially, I mean,
that's crafty, man.
Well,
super crafty.
Okay. So the first time I smoked cannabis, like not only did the pain go away, but it kind of just brought me out of my head. In that I used to think I was, like the smartest guy in the room. Growing up in an Asian family, like A- wasn't enough. We were always like 99 or 100. So by the time I got to UCLA, I was very much used to just being able to like overpower people with like facts and arguments and stuff like that. And then the first time I consumed cannabis and I started talking, I was like able to hear myself from the third person. I'm like, who the fuck is this annoying guy with, he obviously has Napoleon's complex. He's this small, just running his mouth. And I was like, whoa, like this is
man.
Really just, and it gave me a lot more self-awareness. So it was like I felt the pain in my body go away. It made capoeira like more fun. It was less about like showing off to people and more about me being in tune with my body. And then the last part was, just having that awareness that, I was kind of like this dick asshole that would, just try to like overload people with facts. And many times, I didn't even believe in the things that I was arguing for. It was just that I knew I had a boatload of facts and I could just avalanche someone with them.
Wow.
I think I had a similar reaction when I started using cannabis. I wasn't like an asshole with facts and arguments. I was just an asshole, just like an asshole, And it was like being like, just fucking speaking up in class, being a dick, getting in trouble, like fucking around, doing just a bunch of stupid shit that I shouldn't be. And when I started using cannabis, it made me step back and be like, wait, don't say that or don't do that. Actually, maybe think about that person's feelings before you tease them at the expense of a laugh for everybody else. Or
that's an amazing facet of cannabis, I think, that we've never talked about.
Yeah, the empathy.
Yeah, and self-awareness and giving you that third perspective that you're normally not that's not accessible to you.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and it really showed me like a lot of the reason why I was that way was because I was smaller and I was just protecting myself. If I knew that I could use words and psychologically get a leg up on like the bigger athletes that I so much admired, then maybe they would respect me. But the inverse was happening, which was they're like, who's this asshole that always shows up at these parties?
Yeah, and tries to make us all feel stupid.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Interesting. Wait, but rewind a minute. You said your buddy's agent gave him Vicodin?
Correct.
That's a fucked up underworld that needs some uncovering.
Yeah, well, I imagine the stuntman world is very nuanced, right? With like the way the agents work and the way the contracts and.
Yeah, and my my roommate was actually, he was an actor. I could only do stunt work because I've never acted, so when they had me try to do some acting, I was like a deer in the headlights. But my roommate, I think his agent was part of SAG or, I just remember It was kind of like more of a legitimate setup. So when this was happening, I'm in my early 20s. It didn't occur to me. It seemed like it wasn't right, but I was like, well, we're getting this cool stuff. Like, we're part of this Hollywood scene. There's a lot of attractive people. Who the fuck cares? Give me this Vicodin, right?
For sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just really interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that.
And at the time, I think it's important you're obviously curious as far as substances go. You got to try them out to see what works with your body and figure out if it works or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't learn that opioids didn't work for me until I took them. Until I took them enough to realize, wait a second, it's not doing the thing that they want it to do, and it's not making me feel like I can heal.
Right.
You know, because if I'm taking opioids, it's because of an acute injury that happened, is a surgery or something significant enough to warrant a hospital visit, and now they're giving me pills. If I take all of these pills in this bottle, I'm gonna need another bottle, and then I'm gonna need another bottle after that. But after 3, 5, 6, 7 pills of that bottle, I would start to feel yucky about it, and I would be done after 2 or 3 days.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what they're learning now about the cannabis, at least, is that you can use a far smaller dose of opioids, supplement it with a small dose of cannabis, and it gives the opioids a greater effect. And so you don't have to take as many pills. And so when you're trying to convince doctors who prescribe opioids all the time that cannabis is virtuous, they're not going to listen to you if you say, no, your opioids have no application here. You got to use the cannabis. But when you tell them, hey, they can be used in concert, we can use them both. We just don't need as much of your pills anymore. We've had people on who talked about chemotherapy and radiation, the effects of that being increased when you add cannabinoids to the mix, which is crazy. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I believe the cannabinoids either bind with the CB1 receptor, and the CB2 receptor signals to the brain for the cell to commit apoptosis.
Right.
And I may have some of the technical specifics wrong, but yeah, the fact that they found that out, I think it's really relevant scientific data, so that the next generation that looks at it, they won't have all these weird kind of reefer madness type stories to try to get past.
Yeah, the apoptosis is when the cell dies, right?
Correct.
It's a cell die-off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's often a natural process, but it's initiated where?
I believe, the person that explained it to me told me that, he was using Star Trek terms, so that, I don't know, maybe he thought I was a Trekkie, but he said that when you have a cancerous cell, usually, or when you have a sick cell, the cell will signal to the brain that it's a sick cell. Then the brain will then give it the command to, I guess, I don't know if commit apoptosis is the right terminology, but when it's a cancerous cell, that signal, it's basically like there's like a cloaking signal that doesn't allow the brain to receive that signal. So when you consume phytocannabinoids or exogenous cannabinoids and they bind with the CB1 receptor, that signal to the brain somehow gets reactivated. And the way it was explained to me was that if you're like in stage 1 or stage 2 and the tumors are smaller, then the ability for the body to get rid of these sick cells is quicker than the cells can multiply. Now when you're like at stage 4 or later, or I guess dead would be later, but stage 3 or stage 4, your body ability to multiply those tumor cells is quicker than apoptosis could be facilitated. So in those cases, you would have to have a hybrid type of solution where it's chemotherapy plus cannabinoids, or, like you said, the opioids plus cannabinoids. And I tend to think, cannabis isn't like a panacea. It's good for some things and less effective for others. But I think what you're trying to say is just making sure we have an open mind and getting the best pieces of all modalities and just trying to figure out what's best for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no doubt. So you started selling vapes.
Yes.
And you obviously in 97, the vape situation was a heat gun.
Yes.
And so you've been in the vape market for a while then.
Yeah, it's 21 years now. It's
Wow.
pretty much my whole cannabis consumption career has been with vaporizers. And one of the reasons why I think I was able to make, even though it's 4 years old, the desktop of the year, according to High Times, was that, just like you guys have a sole focus on football and achieving your dreams for that, my sole focus wasn't about making the best grow equipment or the best retail location. It was just, what's the healthiest, safest way to transport cannabinoids from the flower or oil into your body. And from 97 to 2010, I bought over 100 different vaporizers. I'm not an engineer, but I was able to take them apart and just kind of use my own logic to see, this was good, this was bad. And in 2010, I had worked for a startup. Salesforce just bought it for like 1.2 billion. I was wondering like what I should do with my life, and my boss was like, those vaporizers that you sell for your friend, like, does he want an investment? And my buddy, I took the first investor over to him. My buddy said, like, I just want to grow this company grassroots, and I asked him if it'd be okay if I tried to create a vaporizer. So that was the impetus and genesis for creating the Vape Exhale. And I've always loved watching people utilize bongs. Even though I was using a vaporizer, I would just see people like hitting a bong, and I would watch like the smoke fill up in that chamber, and it just visually just seemed so stimulating. So when I created a vaporizer, I was like, let's make it like a super vapor bong.
Right.
And the model that you just gifted me with, and I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Is that the same kind of prototype that you came up with back in 2010?
Yeah, that would be like the first of like 30 prototypes. But yeah, that is the genesis of it. And in 2010, I just mentioned I wasn't an engineer, so I wasn't too sure how to build a vaporizer. So I started a blog to build the world's best vaporizer. We had over 1 million hits within the first year, and we had like 300 or so people contributing all these different either physics principles or just mechanical principles to build this vaporizer. And I just collated all that information, gave it to an engineer, and then he helped me take a concept and turn it into what's in that box.
Wow.
Really nice.
So why is delivering the cannabinoids to your body through this contraption healthier or better or safer than a bong or a joint?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously vaporization is healthier than combustion because there's less particulate matter and carbon and carcinogenic particles in there. And actually, I think the 1997 normal study showed that the vapor sample out of a volcano bag was so the sample from the joint was 13% THC, and then the other 87% was tar and carcinogens. In the vapor sample, it was 97% THC, 2% hydrogen, which I interpreted as water, and then 1% miscellaneous, which was the tar and carcinogens. Now, so that's just a basic breakdown of combustion versus vaporization. Now, for vaporization, just like Kleenex, there's many grades of facial tissue paper, right? Kleenex is always like double ply, and then you get some like cheap single ply shit at Costco. So for vaporization, there's a couple of different methodologies of heating. There's conductive heat, where there's surface to surface contact. Like most of the vape pens, the oil is sitting right on top of the heating element. So think of that as like grilling or frying your concentrate. We utilize convective heat, which is utilizing hot air. So hot air is more gentle, it's more thorough, it's more efficient. What that means to the end user is it tastes better, it hits you harder, and you use less. So we think that's a pretty strong value proposition for whatever type of stoner you are. And what specifically makes ours better is a few things. We use that all-glass air path. Glass is, like I said, inert and non-reactive, so even if water spills in, like aluminum cartridge heaters could oxidize, and you don't want rust in the air path. So that glass air path is really important. And if you really love the taste of all the different terpenes, like the Chronique Boutique guys, like they have these really awesome strains with like unique terpene profiles. And if you think about like grilling and frying a steak versus putting it in a convection oven, sometimes like the grill marks do taste good, but in the case of these flower or concentrate strains, like you probably don't want that mixed with that type of flavor. So what we really try to focus on was vapor to smoke ratio. Like all vaporizers have a little bit of smoke because you need to bring it to a certain temperature. But if we could get the vapor to smoke ratio higher, just like if you get like a high enough ratio of CBD to THC, you almost don't even feel the THC. So we have not conducted any studies on this, but we do believe that our methodology does produce the highest vapor to smoke ratio, which is why you could just take these massive inhalations but not cough the same way you would cough if you were, just hitting a joint or a standard bong.
You guys heard it. Highest ratios. We'll be right back after this break.
One of the greatest secrets in life is this. If you're ready to experiment with something new, you might succeed or you might fail. If you succeed, good for you. If you fail, and if you survive, all is not lost. you have a chance to look at things really clearly. You have a chance to learn something and try again with a different approach. It might be horrible, and you will be forced to change. That's a good thing. Keep at it and try again. If you do, life has a deal in store for you. She will make you stronger. Fail the right way, and something is given to you. That's the deal with life. Guillaume Wolf from You Are a Message. And we're back on the Caveman Poet Society, sitting here with our brother from another mother, Seibo Chen of Vape Exhale, talking about why the Vape Exhale is so clean, one of the best units around, as you heard here earlier, Desktop of the Year from High Times Magazine.
That's right.
That's a great award.
Yeah, 4th straight year, too.
Oh, wow.
Hell yeah, brother. I love it. And just getting better and better.
So what comes along with that kind of award? It's a physical award? Is it a monetary reward? Do they give you a bunch of weed?
It is a physical award. I can't say it's a very, extravagant-looking award.
Is it that little, rectangle, clear one? Yeah, we saw it on that one dude's desk the other day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he had a bunch of them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It looks much more impressive, on an ad when you say, 4 times Cannabis Cup award winner than when you actually see the trophy. When you see the trophy, you're kind of... my kids just started AYSO, and they get trophies of about that same caliber. So no offense, High Times, just being real here.
Nah, it's great for the resume, though.
Yeah. Well, you obviously know what you're doing.
Can we talk about your new toy that's fucking awesome?
Is it cool if I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
On what we were talking about before the break.
Please.
Because you talked about if you smoke it. They measured the levels of that, and they found something like 17% THC, the rest carcinogens and whatever. Why is that? Does that mean that's what's in the cannabis itself? Is just the burning of it creates that kind of wasteoid crap that goes in your lungs?
Very salient question. So, it's more the former it's more the latter than the former in that there's actually a chemical reaction happening during combustion. So, molecules and chemicals that were there before, get transformed during that combustion period, whereas through vaporization, you are just simply taking the solid and taking it through the process of becoming a liquid and then a gas. So there's no actual chemical change, whereas in combustion, the chemical change occurs, and that's where the carcinogens are created.
Got it. Cool.
Interesting. Well, you've got some new stuff coming out.
I got some new stuff.
Is it available yet?
It's not available yet.
Okay, can you talk about it?
We could talk a little bit about it.
Right.
I think everyone has known for the last 3.5 years that we've been working on some new stuff. And it was essentially, when we designed the Vape XL Evo, I'm a cannabis connoisseur, so I essentially just designed it for myself, right? And what we've seen in this industry is that we call them the cannabis curious, like the new people that are consuming cannabis, that some of them want this really high-level experience, but a lot of them just want convenience. And when I looked at the vape pens on the market, they are very, very convenient, but there's a lot of things about them that I just don't think, the end user's health was taken into consideration. So the early days of the vape pens, they utilize a wicking system, which if we go back to conductive vaporization where there's surface-to-surface contact, the wick is basically made of cotton. It absorbs the oil, and then that wick is sitting on top of a heater. And that heater is basically burning the wick. So you're getting some mixture of vapor with some mixture of smoke, which is why even though they're very easy to use, a lot of people find them very harsh. So what we ended up doing was finding this ceramic coil. It's not made of cotton, it's made of ceramic, which is also inert and non-reactive. We found one that has 3 times the surface area as most ceramic atomizers on the market. And with more surface area, you could use lower temperatures to create more vapor. So it's not magic, but if you think about if you cook pancakes for your kids, if you have a small 4-inch griddle, it may take, a minute to cook that pancake. If you got a, 1-foot griddle, you'll make that crepe in like 1 or 2 seconds with the same amount of heat. So that same principle is what we're applying to the concentrates and allowing our ceramic core atomizer to absorb more of that oil. So you could use lower temperatures to get just the same amount of thickness, but a lot more flavor and a lot more smoothness.
I also heard that if depending on what temperature you vaporize the flower, will give you a different effect. If you vaporize it at a lower temperature, for example, it'll be more of a sativa, more of a higher, more alert high. And if you go burn it all the way, like on a volcano, for example,
Yep.
then you'll kind of have a heavier high. Is that true?
Well, in general, that is true. Where the lower temp cannabinoids tend to give you more of a euphoric feeling, and the higher temperature ones give you more of a sedative feeling. Now with the introduction of terpenes, that kind of adds a little bit of complexity into what exactly is an indica versus a sativa. And then the last part is, our own personal biochemistry. I think that as I was walking in here, I noticed a gentleman that actually did testing for that type of stuff so that you could understand, which cannabinoids and terpenes actually your body responds well to or doesn't like, right? So, but yes, as a general rule of thumb, higher temperature tends to give you more sedative effects. Lower temperatures tend to give you more euphoric effects.
That's interesting.
And so your technology would allow that kind of lower temperature combustion. Not combustion, but vaporization.
Correct. And the actual word would be sublimation, because vaporization is from solid to liquid to gas, and sublimation is from solid to gas. And, well, that's just some nerdy shit.
Love that.
It's nerdy, but it's also funny about how the semantics around cannabis evolve and how the words we use to describe it evolve and how we get caught up in saying certain things that might not be accurate, but we just say it. Actually, Len, the gentleman you just referred to, was talking about, I was asking him, so what are the best strains? What are the best strains? He said, well, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's talking, strain is basically a virus, Let's think of something else to call it. And so what we're calling it, chemovars.
Got it. I've also heard cultivars as
cultivars.
well.
Yeah, cultivars. So you've been down that road, you know it. But it's just funny the way the language around cannabis evolves.
I mean, just language in general is such an interesting thing because, I grew up in California, very liberal, and even the word liberal seems to be a different meaning today.
Yeah.
So it's just watching language evolve and what words we use to describe things. Like I find myself when I say the word weed now, I'm almost like correcting myself to say cannabis, and I'm like, well, I'm just with my boys. I don't need to correct myself. But yeah, it is fascinating to see this evolution. And also I'm very appreciative of having more vocabulary to describe these things. Like, we talked about when you're using cannabis for athletic performance and not just for recovery, what do we call that? And, we came up with a vernacular that was, why don't we call that activation? We have medication, we have intoxication, but, when we take a puff and go for a bike ride, or I like to do jujitsu, what do we call that? And I like to call that getting activated.
Yeah. I love that. Love that terminology. Well, if texting has anything to say about it, we'll be speaking in emojis pretty soon.
We're going to have an all emoji podcast where we don't actually talk. We just text each other emojis the whole time.
What's interesting is I've been kind of getting into some Egyptology lately, and
cuneiform
symbols.
Well, yeah, they look like emojis.
Yeah,
right.
For sure, man.
I mean, they're writing in
totally,
emojis.
Dude.
So.
I mean, fuck.
That's hilarious.
That's crazy. So we've talked. We're gonna. How do you feel? Well, I feel like we covered the vape exhale pretty significantly.
Of course we did.
Yeah.
Do you have more you want to talk about?
No. That's people know where to get it. Vapeexhale.com. And you know what we'll do is
we'll do a plug at the end too.
Yeah, and if they use CPS as the code, they will save 20%. So
wow.
We'll just do that right now. Yeah.
Boom, baby.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, man. Love that. Well, when I was doing a little dabbling into microdosing with some psychedelics, namely LSD.
Yes.
And also, psilocybin in the past, and then my most recent ayahuasca journey.
Yes.
You were a guy that I had a lot of dialogue with during that time. And we had some pretty interesting conversations around it. And you yourself have had some experiences with psychedelics in your life.
Absolutely. A lot of them.
And so let's talk a little bit about that, man. Ayahuasca, have you done it yet?
That is one I have not done, but my wife and I are preparing to do an ayahuasca journey, and we're actually trying to figure out which individuals we would like to share that experience with. And yeah, I mean, I think
that's cool.
Listening to yours, it was one that I had my wife listen to as well, just so that she understood the preparation that other people do. And yeah, I mean, we're very excited to do it. And actually, she had a DMT or dimethyltryptamine experience, and the second she woke up from it, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, it told me to do ayahuasca.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
She received that message.
Yes. I mean, the first thing I said when I came out of it was, how long was I under? You know, and if someone said 1 second or 1,000 years, I would have accepted either answer like
Wow.
readily, you know. But when she came out of it, the first thing she said was, it told me to do ayahuasca. And it was, and it wasn't clear to her right when she came out of it, but over the course of the next couple of weeks, what came to her was that what she saw during the DMT experience was like, you know, basically like doing like a boot camp. You know, like you do a boot camp, you shock your body, but the actual strength gains are doing consistent workouts, right? It's the work afterwards. So they compared DMT to like, it's like a boot camp. You just like, it will show you that there's something more out there. But ayahuasca, and the way they described it to me was DMT takes you immediately to the spirit realm, whereas ayahuasca takes you through all the different dimensions before you get to the spirit realm. So instead of drinking from the fire hose, you get to sip it slowly by slowly. Or
slowly by slowly, man.
Yes,
I like that.
Slowly by slowly.
Well, the DMT is like
that.
walking in at the end of the movie, you know? Almost. Like
Yeah, just
instead of
seeing the climax.
Yeah, and like, oh, this is awesome, but I don't know what it means.
Yes.
Interesting.
Instead
I love
of being
that.
there for the whole thing.
So talk to us about what was the DMT experience like?
Is DMT is DMT a derivative of the ayahuasca?
Yeah, ayahuasca is DMT and then some other molecules mixed in there to help, you know, with your body's digestion of
Some
the DMT.
enzymes
Some
You probably know, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a super
inhibitors.
expert, but what Evan was saying, and ultimately, I think a good analogy is if ayahuasca is flowers, DMT is like concentrates. So,
right.
you know, it's a lot more concentrated. And as Evan was saying, the other ingredients within ayahuasca, it's almost like putting on like a transdermal time release patch, right? Like these other ingredients that are in the ayahuasca brew allow for the dimethyltryptamine to be slowly released, so that instead of like just taking a shot of 151, you get to sip a cup of wine and kind of more, I guess, have a more controlled experience versus just being blasted into another dimension.
Right. So we could talk about I'm fascinated to hear the timeline on the DMT, but ayahuasca, for instance, that's an all-night affair. You know, you're doing that. The ceremony is from, 9 p.m. You get going, and it doesn't stop until sunrise.
Yep.
So with DMT, how long were you under for?
10 minutes, and they actually call it like the Silicon Valley psychedelic now because, a lot of my...
No one has time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, well, I can't carve out 8 hours for ayahuasca.
I got 30 minutes and I need to have a psychedelic experience.
Yeah. Or like Burning Man's only once a year, right? Yeah. So they're like, well, how can I tap into this more often? And, people have been microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. Some people have been taking, DMT vape pens around. I guess they all have their own path. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it is so short, and I mean, I've done it 6 times. I'm not an expert in it, but each time I did it, I had epiphanies, and it exposed things to me that that really changed my life for the better. And it wasn't always evident right away, but like, for example, the first time I did it, it was the day before I took my family to a trip to Italy. And for the next 2 weeks, I had the exact same dream, which was I'm in a hurry to get somewhere. The GPS is telling me where to go. And I'm always telling the GPS, like, I know shortcuts. And I end up getting to the place late. And then, like, on the 15th day of having this same
and
dream...
you were in Italy when this was happening?
Yes, and I just keep telling my wife, I'm having the same dream. Like, what does it mean?
So wait a minute. So you were able to do it and then the next day go hop on a plane. So you're not. It's a quick recovery.
There's no
you're
psychological
in and out.
hangover.
Oh,
You're
I picked up my kids like 30 minutes later.
And you were fine?
Yes.
And so you're really, it's like walking into a room and walking out.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather have like a day or two to myself to just, process
Contemplate?
everything.
Yeah.
But if you needed to go back to regular life, you could totally go back to regular life.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay, so you're having the same dream, which is fascinating.
Right. So, in my mind, I'm like, obviously, it's trying to show me like I'm supposed to go somewhere, right? But I'm like overriding that, and then I'm becoming late. And then, so the final piece of the puzzle is that one morning I wake up, and instead of waking up where it just shows that I'm late, I sleep a little bit longer, and then it shows that the GPS is actually my heart. And my brain is, my cognitive brain. And it was showing me that, like, I was really overriding everything that my body was telling me. You're tired. You need to take a rest. And I just kind of overpower that. Or just, when you're running a business, you have all these emails. Or if you have kids, you just have all these action items. So a lot of times my body would be telling me stuff and I would just ignore it. Or, for example, like my investors would be like, why don't you make the bong out of metal? And I would be like, oh, this is a very, they invested a lot of money. I got to take their idea into consideration.
Right.
But and then, then I'll find myself at conflict. My head saying, or my heart saying no, but my head's like, I got to make this investor happy, right? So it was kind of showing me like, Seibo, you're not an idiot. Like, you know what you need to do. Like, if your body's telling you something, listen to it. And the truth is, after I made that connection, like, so many things got so much easier because I was doing things for why I wanted to do them versus having, like, these outside influences affecting my decision-making, And, a lot of people, I mean, following your heart, that's not, like, mind-blowing shit. But I think as you get older,
it's the truth.
and you have a lot of these responsibilities and you stop listening to your body because you're like, like when you guys are injured, I'm sure you're like, your body's telling you like, don't practice.
Right.
But you're like, I got to practice. If I don't practice, I'm out of a job, right? So
it
it's
really
like,
sets up one of the psychological prisms of the football player's life. Mm-hmm. I think that whole dynamic of your body is telling you, dude, we can't do this.
Ignoring the warning light.
Ignoring that.
Yeah.
Over and over again for, 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about pushing through,
For sure.
But at the same time, there's, if you understand your body well enough, you should be able to go, all right, well, I should probably go to bed right now because I need some sleep. If I don't sleep tomorrow, I'm going to be really grumpy. And, that life lesson was so important to me because I think as an entrepreneur, especially in the Silicon Valley, it's like, oh, if you don't have $1 billion company, you ain't shit. And obviously that's such like stupid thinking, but like as a ego. But as an early entrepreneur, just trying to establish myself,
sure.
It's just like, well, you don't know what you don't know, and you start emulating these other, quote unquote, more successful CEOs, and then you realize that's why they're all upset and not happy. It's because they're not listening to their bodies either.
Well, no doubt.
And so your body came up with a little metaphor and it sent it to your psyche, and then you went to sleep, and then it gave you that image over and over and over.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, if you guys stick around, we're going to keep following our hearts right after the break.
Taking Movantik did a great job of reducing my opioid-induced constipation caused by medicines I used to manage chronic pain. But it came with some unwanted baggage. That's why I take Tabrizium. Tabrizium helps reduce certain side effects so I don't have to worry about being judged by my Uber driver. Thanks to Tabrizium, I can spend my time doing what matters to me with the people who matter the most, while still taking Movantik. For my constipation. From taking opioids. For my chronic pain.
Do not take Tabrizium if pregnant, looking to become pregnant, or looking at someone who is pregnant. Side effects may include mood swings, restless hair syndrome, spontaneous racism, Tory spelling disorder, benign Anglophilia, and chronic list recital. If you have thoughts of suicide or thoughts of opening a boutique soap emporium, please stop taking Tabrizium immediately and consult your doctor while continuing to purchase Tabrizium. Do not combine Tabrizium with water as death can occur.
It just takes 6 pills of Debrisium a day to make this a blast from the past.
And we're back. Back with Seibo Chen, and we're talking DMT. Exciting stuff, really fun. The spirit molecule,
Yes.
I believe it has been dubbed.
And there's a different version, 5-MeO-DMT, which is called
Right.
the God molecule, which you have to somehow find a poisonous toad in,
Yeah, the
in
toad.
Mexico. Yeah.
That comes from the toad. Different from our toad,
the combo.
our frog
Right,
friend,
right.
the combo. So let's dive into, what is it like, man? DMT, it says it transports you directly into the spiritual realm. What is that like? What is that experience like? Are you still cognitive? Where, are you just fully immersed in this, in a visual experience? What is that? What is it like?
Very good question, and I'll draw upon my 6 experiences to try to give you guys a good idea. So the first part is, if you guys have seen Doctor Strange, have you guys seen Doctor Strange?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Nate hasn't, Eben has. Do you remember when the bald lady puts her hand on his forehead and then he starts flying through space and time?
Yes.
So it's like that times 1,000,000.
Whoa.
So
Okay.
yeah, and
So you're flying.
I
pretty
mean,
much.
I've had one analogy that I've used with people is that I had this theory. This is a really out there theory, but I listened to Elon Musk talk about space travel and how hard it's going to be to not just colonize Mars, but to get to other life-sustaining planets within the Milky Way. And even at the speed of light, it's going to take thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. So we need to find a faster way. And I have this really crazy hypothesis that maybe that spaceship might be the DMT molecule. Instead of physically transporting your body, it takes your consciousness to another realm. And, that could be just some bro science there. But, I've just been trying to wrap my head around it because it's so such a fantastic experience. And other people have said there's just no vocabulary to really describe what you see. So
Right.
I was trying to make that connection to that Doctor Strange movie. But for me, the various times I've did it, it has been extremely visual. I've always
The physical, just the set and the setting, you're smoking it.
Yep.
And what I've heard is that you take 1 hit, you take 2, and by the time you're taking 3, you can't physically do anymore, and that's when you kind of blast off into the...
Yes, and through the Evo, I think just after 1, you don't have the ability to take another one. When you consume cannabis, there's probably a 2 to 3 minute latency period before you realize, how elevated you are. But with DMT, I mean, every time I've tried it, the second I inhaled, I could just feel my entire body vibrating. I remember the first time I looked at my hands and then I could see all the individual molecules. Then I could also see all the molecules in the air. Then I could see all the molecules that the ground, the desk, everything was made up of. And then that's when I realized, I was like, oh shit, biblically, when they say we are all the same or we are all one, this is what they mean. Fundamentally, we are these carbon-based beings, and everything here is carbon. They're just arranged in different rearrangements. And I've encountered, I don't know if it was God. One time I saw myself. I argued with myself, except he was an even faster talking version of me, and he was calling me out on my Facebook feed saying that you're portraying yourself as a great father and a great husband, but all you really do is post pictures of you and your kids and you and your wife on dates, but you're always preoccupied. And they kind of, it was almost like Christmas, the Christmas Tale, where the ghost of Christmas past would take you, and I'm watching myself take a picture of my kids, about to eat dinner, then I just start answering emails, and I was like, holy shit, what a lesson to learn. And that guy just showed me those things. Sometimes I had verbal conversations, sometimes I've had telepathic conversations, and one time I had no visuals, no nothing, but when I woke up, it was like I had when you upgrade your cell phone to the newest iOS or operating system, and then you're like, oh, whoa, now it could do this or it could do that. It's I just woke up with new apps in my body.
You speaking French?
Well, I was able to, I mean, I wish I could speak French, but I mean, it was just more Like, for example, the app that it gave me was allowing myself to feel sad. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but one thing that I realized about myself was I'm an extremely like cheery and upbeat person. And one of the things that I realized was in order to be a complete human being, you also have to experience like the downs too. Yeah. Because if you're just focused on the ups, like, it's basically we got second place once at a High Times. And because we had just been winning all the time, getting second place, I was like, I threw a hissy fit. I was like, this cannabis cup is set up. Like, there's no way we could not have won first place, second. And then, like, the show organizer was like, you got second. Like, most people are happy about that, right? And anyway, so what I realized was being, like, this optimistic, upbeat person, it just made me, like, chase happier and happier experiences. And if I never allowed myself to feel sad, like, for example, like when my grandparents died, I was like, oh, my grandparents were extremely educated. They had a bunch of kids that had really awesome grandkids. They lived a full life. Now that they're gone, well, that's just the circle of life. They had an awesome life. Let's celebrate their life. But deep down, I was like, I wanted to cry, right? But I'm like rationalizing all these things in my head, so I don't need to feel bad. And, the first death I had in my family since I had the psychedelic journey was my dog. And when my dog passed away, I found myself saying the same thing. I was like, well, he was 15 for a bully breed. That's like really old. He wasn't a rescue dog. He never had to fight. He's always had a good life with me. And then I was like, no, this is what I always do. I just got to allow myself. And then I just cried for like a whole night. And in a weird way, the way I described it to my wife was like, it felt like super good to like cry. And it actually gave me like closure to it, whereas I think that when I was like making excuses for like why it was okay someone passed away or something tragic happened, I never had closure because I just kind of shoved it to the side and started thinking happy thoughts.
Sure. So you're having these emotional illuminations, which to me is really the crux of psychedelic experiences. They show us, they illuminate for us our blockages emotionally and where we don't allow ourselves to be, or what we how we it totally resonates with me what you were saying about your God self telling you, hey man, you post all this shit about you being really involved dad and partner to your wife, and yet you're there sidetracked the whole time. And that's a big part about being a parent.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, being a guy who has shit going on, businesses, dreams that you want to cultivate and create, and then all of a sudden having to come home and turn that off and be fully present with your family is really a gift.
Totally.
It's something that I've definitely been working on and learning the tools for as I've matured as a parent and a husband. So the flying through space and time, are you landing in the palm of your hand and running across your fingers, and that's mutating into another hand and more, paragons and octagons of color and
sacred geometry is definitely very, very prevalent. I don't know if you guys remember like Buck Rogers when you were younger, but like when they're like starting to go into like light speed, you kind of see all the like stars just flying towards you. And, a lot of the, another thing that it really kind of taught me was, the concept of like letting go and being vulnerable. Like the first time I did it, like I was really, it came on so strong, like it frightened me. I could only imagine like that's what like the Hulk feels like when he's like, oh shit, I'm about to change from Bruce Banner to the Hulk, and you feel like all this like energy like just charged up in your body. And like, it really was like unlike any.
You felt it all through your body?
Dude, it was just like every time it's just like.
And as that charge is going through your body, what's your vision doing? Are you still seeing things normally, or is that starting?
Yeah, it's just like.
But it's coming from everywhere.
Yeah, I'm like, someone needs to like lie me down because I'm about to like pass out and just be like deep within my mind. And and that's why I kind of had that idea of maybe these are the spaceships. I know it sounds like super out there, but like transporting a physical body hundreds of millions of light years with what we know of technology today is undoable. But one of the things that it kind of showed me, and it almost always shows me these things in technology visuals, was that like our bodies are basically like empty smartphones when we turn them on. And when we're born, it's like that empty smartphone gets to tap into the internet, and then just, we're all part of the same internet, but being expressed in like different bodies. Like your biochemistry is a little different from mine. We have like these little meat vehicles that we walk in, but fundamentally, like I went to Catholic school, so I was kind of turned off by religion. But as I had more and more experiences on DMT, and I would compare them to like biblical texts, like we are all one, or God made us in their image, I was like, it really did make the concept of perhaps early man trying psychedelics and seeing these things being the genesis of religion.
Well, the yogis talk about it, and all the yogi sutras, all the ancient Sanskrit texts speak of all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Carl Jung was really the first guy to tap into this idea that we are all part of this collective consciousness, that we all are, as you said, different expressions of the same whole. You think about the range of thoughts, emotions, experiences that we all have, and what if you pull us as one particle out and plug us into the collective consciousness? We fill a piece of that range in the grand scheme of humanity and the human species.
Each individual?
Each individual.
Yeah.
In the grand, and I think that's what the internet is really the manifestation of this collective consciousness. It's this thing that we all share, put into something that we can actually see and touch and interact with.
Oh, that's a really psychedelic thought, but it makes sense.
But the internet doesn't always connect our best impulses with one another.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, like Seibo said earlier, in order to fully experience life and to fully appreciate it, you need to feel the negative and the positive. You need to fucking embrace the darkness in yourself as well as the light.
Yeah.
And on the internet, it sure as fuck holds the darkest shit of humanity and the lightest.
But but there's a lot of masquerading on the internet. There's a lot of
for sure, and there's
false
a lot of
morality, and there's also a lot of posturing and like fake, like you're talking about presenting something that wasn't accurate,
right?
And everyone's doing that.
I would say at every point in a human experience, you're doing all of those things at some time or another.
Yes,
well.
But the internet doesn't put a check on you like real life does. You'll say things online that you will not say in real life.
For sure.
And also you will say things to people online, and even via text that you wouldn't say in real life. Canceling plans, for example.
For sure.
You used to have to actually call them to do it. Now it's, not going to make it. Sorry.
Well, that's free will. Over. That's free will at work.
But it's exacerbated by the internet.
Maybe.
Are you supporting social media now? Or are you jumping on?
No. I'm just saying that it's a model for human consciousness, the collective human consciousness. It's the physical model that we've built, that we've created.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of think of the internet. It's like giving a Ferrari to a 10-year-old. Like we all know it's like really awesome, but we're not too quite sure like how fast we should drive it or how hard we should push it. And I think we're all finding those things out. And fundamentally, even though we were talking about how these things pull you out of flow state, and for what me and my wife do, we just put our phones down from 6 to 9 so we could be with the kids.
Nice.
But fundamentally, we look at these things just like cannabis. Is cannabis good or bad? Well, it's neither. It's how you use it, right? And, like for social media, like for me, what it's really helped is I have a lot of family that's like in Asia. So, that part is super beneficial. But where it's not beneficial is when I'm trying to look like Father of the Year and I'm spending, 30 minutes trying to craft this really cool post. And my kids are like, Dad, I'm hungry. And I'm like,
Exactly. Well, to round out that argument, sort of, we were having, Nate.
I know what you were saying.
But I always appreciate your devil's advocacy.
Devil's advocacy.
what I think the problem with it is that people are substituting that for your own experience of life. Obviously,
For sure, yeah.
You know, because this thing is so good of a replication of human consciousness, you know, so many people are just letting their own humanity, their own consciousness go to the wayside and plugging into this virtual thing.
Yeah. And becoming masturbating machines. I mean, like the internet is
No
for
doubt.
porn,
In many
and it's
ways.
changed the face of sex in this country completely. I mean, a kid sees hardcore pornography on a screen before he ever really touches a girl in a sexual way.
Well,
And
did
so
you know-
you're being hold on a second though. You're
Yeah,
being
yeah, sorry.
introduced to hardcore sexual acts, and that's what that's your lesson about what sex is. And so these kids finally do start kissing a girl and hugging a girl, and they want to go straight to the fucking bukkake, man.
Yeah.
And they can't feel real connections. And now you got kids who have erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
And fucking can't relax, and infertility is huge in the millennial
Yes,
community.
and
I mean,
apparently in millennials as well, millennials are having less sex than any generation before us,
I believe it.
which is kind of a fascinating twist on the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean-
They're the most hypersexualized,
Right.
but least sexual.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting is, have you heard of the book Humans? So
I think so.
it's about the history of humanity, and basically it starts off with this dark story that's like, why is Cro-Magnon man not around? Well, it's because Homo sapiens fucking killed them all, you know?
Yeah.
But what they really talked about was, several things, but the thing that really resonated with me was that the human brain is conditioned for being social. You know, they talked about
Right.
like if you were like a singular human, like roaming around, like the thing that would double your chances of survival is another human. So we're kind of wired for being social with each other. And you rarely have they found a happy person that didn't have a healthy social life. So the way that they compared social media was that social media is like eating junk food. Like
yes.
it'll help you pass time when you're hungry, but it's not really giving you sustenance. So social media is great, like if you need to like just keep connected, or like a few posts from Eugene or some other guys that we know. But the best nutrition for our social brains would be like these face-to-face interactions that we're having.
Yeah. Fucking A, man.
We don't need eye candy. We need eye broccoli.
Broccoli.
Nourish the soul, man.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I feel like we could riff all day with you, brother.
Yeah. Fucking
We'll have
wealth of knowledge.
We'll have to have you back.
I would love to come
have
back.
you back.
I did not meet Gandalf, or I met Gandalf.
Yeah,
Is
he's just-
Gandalf usually here?
He's usually
He was
laying right here.
distracted. There was a lot going on before we started the pod, so
There was a lot of action here today.
that usually doesn't happen. Usually we're alone, allowed to just come into the chamber.
I thought Gandalf may have been like an old English sheepdog based on his name, but Jed here is actually kind of like what I imagine maybe Gandalf's
Yeah.
like fur would kind of look like. And then when
Yeah.
I saw he was a pit bull, I was like, oh, dope. I got a blue-nosed pit bull as well.
Jed does look like Gandalf.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Holy
Yeah.
crap. You guys can't see, but he's growing his beard super long, and it's also very gray and
It
curly
looks great.
on the chin.
So give people a little shot of where they can find you,
Yep.
and all your handles, brother.
Yeah, my company, Vape Exhale, vapeexhale.com, VAPEXHALE.com. Me, Seibo Chen. If you just type me in the internet, you'll find everything. SEIBO, super unique name. Not too hard to find. And thank you guys for having me on. I had a lot of fun. It was cool being on a show that I listened to, and hopefully I didn't freak you out with all my CPS knowledge.
Not at all,
No,
man.
man.
Not at all.
And also that discount code, CPS.
CPS.
On vapeexhale.com.
20% off?
20% off, baby.
That's $100.
It's a great deal.
Ooh, my favorite part. I've been rehearsing for this part.
Well, before we get to that, Seibo, you just hold your little horses, my brother. You know what to do, everybody. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, tune in, tell a friend, send us an email. Check out our website, cavemanpoetsociety.com. You might find Nate's books there. Exciting stuff, anything new that we're up to. Also on Instagram at Caveman Poet Society, on Twitter at Caveman Poet Pod. We love you guys so much. Turn your phones off. Give yourself from 6 to 9 like Seibo does. Eat the right foods. Give meditating a try. Go outside, get some exercise. Hug a loved one. 11 hugs a day keeps you emotionally balanced, everybody. Little tidbit.
11.
Lots of love to you. Until next time, we are out.
Woo. Everybody did a really good job on the pod. That's right. I said everybody did a really good job on the pod. I said everybody did a really good job on the pod. I said everybody did a really good job on the pod. Hey, Eben.
Yes.
You did a very good job on the pod.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Nathan.
Yes?
Did a really good job on the pod.
Thanks. Seibo.
That's me.
A really good job on the pod.
Good job.
And Jen.
Jen.
A really good job on the pod.
Great job.
Really good job.
Everybody did a really good job. Everybody did a really good job. Everybody did a really good job. Everybody did a really good job on the pod.